Hello everyone, JinLair here, back with the next game. We're going to be sending in Harroku. Not going to be sending in me, but I'm kind of okay with that. I am a little worried now that I don't have Zen, because it would have been a lot better for me than Warhawk, and I was confident in Warhawk, but I feel like he just didn't, like, even after the game he said I should have just waited. Like, he said it was like, I messed up my drop, but I mean, it wasn't even really a drop. It was a frontal push, and like the thing is, you can't like poke and like shoot move against blink stalkers because what he did was he just blinked in and killed the medevacs. Whether he loaded his units up to the medevacs or not, it wouldn't have mattered. Like he blinks on top of the medevacs, he loses like half his stalkers, but then he's got 3 shield batteries, and then you just got what, like a small chunk of stim bio to nothing. It's not enough. Like it actually would have been better for him to get a drop, and I think in general the build failed to do what it needed to do against him. Like you really need to go, like one of the builds I think would really wreck LilzLot is the 2 base push without medevacs, where you go for like just like 2 or 3 tanks and a small chunk of bio, sometimes without stim, and you just basically kind of like contain the Protoss player on 2 bases, and if they have the third, you just kind of cut them off. It's the game that Rack City played against the Terran. I forget his name, but on our first week in the original Diamond League, that's the build I think would work very well versus LilzLot, because that would hit right before he was warping in extra units. Like he would have like 4 or 5 stalkers and a sentry to like 2 or 3 tanks and a small chunk of bio. At that point, you just siege up below the ramp, move all your bio up, and you don't even need stim pack. Your opponent just doesn't have enough. So hopefully Harroku can do something better. I'm really just hoping he doesn't get scared, because he always says he does very well in macro, but then he ends up not macroing. I'm really just hoping he doesn't go for anything too cheesy here. I'm hoping he just tries to macro, tries to beat him in the late game, keeps scouting his opponent, knows what he's facing, reacts properly. If Roku does that, he wins. So in the top right, team captain coming in for JinLair PinkWings, it is Harroku. And the bottom right, looking to reverse all kill JinLair PinkWings, it is LilzLot. Daily life versus swarm player. Bile on low ground this time, now that it's PVZ versus PVT. Double drone. No gas yet, so it's most likely just going to be hatch gas pool. Classic. The standard. And yep, there goes the drone. Oh boy. So close. It looks like he's going to go for the third. Nope. Oh, that was actually really smart on Hiroku's part. Oof. Not quite enough though. So he moved his drone away to make his opponent think he was going for the third, but he didn't. Personally, if I gas block my opponent here, I would uh or if I hatch block my opponent here, I would go for gas geyser, because that basically prevents him from doing any sort of like 1 or 2 base all in against me. Like you're not gonna be able to make roaches or banes off of like 1 gas unless you're gonna like skip on link speed. Personally, I would love for him to just build a pylon there and finish it. But yeah, he's gonna see the third, so he doesn't need to do that. But the reason I would usually let the pylon finish is because 100 minerals isn't that much, and it also means that the opponent can't like send lings across the map immediately. And on top of that, it doesn't even take that. It's not like it's quick for lings to kill that. Third hatch very quick, and he does see that now. However, I'm not sure if he can really do anything to punish it, because he's just got Cybercore finishing now. Nexus is halfway done, and he's probably going to have a queen on the way in a second. Still making drones. He's got a queen in production, but he's supply blocked. That's what it is. He is chronoing out an Adept, which I think we'll barely get there a little too late for the Queen to pop. But okay, we see a Twilight. It just looks like it might be the same build as before. I mean, personally, I don't think the build gets particularly better or worse. I just think the build itself is quite unsafe. It's pretty greedy, not going pretty greedy, not so much on economy, but on tech. You go for Robo and Twilight on just 4 Stalkers to defend pretty much the whole early game. That can work for like Zerg, I guess, with like the wall off and you just put a unit here. But like if they make like Banes or Roaches, what are you gonna do against that? Only one Adept isn't really gonna be able to kill that many drones. But so far Harroku isn't reacting. A little bit of a late reaction, so he's gonna get a few here. But I think the Adept's gonna die. He doesn't even get a third drone because a little bit of a body block from the Lings. 3 drones for an Adept is semi-okay. 2, it's not okay. And DT Shrine. This is, I do personally like this. This is one of the ways that Harroku loses this is if he doesn't fully scout his opponent. And he does have a full health Overlord here, but moving it onto the natural base isn't really going to see much, especially since he already sees the Warp Prism. Or the Robo making something, which is making a Warp Prism. The big question is, will he see the Warp Prism? Because if he sees the Warp Prism, he might not expect it, but he'll know that some sort of drop is coming. So it's going to be 4 gate DT. This is like an FXB build right here. And personally, if I was Harroku, my opponent's scouts, I went pretty early on 3 Ashes because I want to make sure I've got that I'm not going to have just this base and not this base. Because then the problem there is the queens are super far away from each other. The queens can never meet up. I would definitely be expecting some sort of an attack. And yeah, there's no way he's going to see this given that Overlord placement. Luckily, his opponent only has 1 Stalker. He's going to see 1 Gateway, and that's it. The thing is, usually in ZVT, you would build Blind Spores, because Banshee's just like so common, and Spores do really well against Banshees. But you're not going to do that. You're not going to be building Spores against DTs unless you expect DTs. And I would think there's a possibility of DTs, and yeah, because you saw that his opponent was going greedy, and it looks like the Overseer's going to finish just in time, but he actually doesn't have like any units to deal with it. He's got the Queens, and that's pretty much it. But he does have the detection just barely in time. He is making Roaches, but okay, very poor. That was very overeager, LilzLot. That was very, very overeager, especially because okay, Warp Prism might have had its range nerfed by 1, but it still has 5 pickup range. It doesn't have 2 pickup range. Like, you don't have to be right above the DTs. That was a lot. That actually could have gone a lot better for LilzLot than I thought. I actually thought LilzLot had that. Even with the Overseers, he only had Queens, and DTs actually do a lot of DPS. Now we can see a Bane Nest coming up. I'm a little surprised about this, especially since he has a lair. I'm surprised it's not a Hydra Den, or a Spire. I'm not sure which would actually be better versus LilzLot. Overseer not quite in position. Yeah, personally, after the DTs didn't do much damage, I would definitely put a Spore per base, because even though you're sacrificing a drone and 100 minerals, you're in a pretty good position economically, to the point where you can do that quite comfortably, but also it means you'll always have detection at your bases. They have to immediately go in and immediately snipe the Spore colors. And if that's the case, then the drones can run away in time. So Roach Speed, Melee Attacks, Bane Nest. Going for a little bit of everything, but in this case, Harroku's actually using a little bit of everything, although so far I don't see any Lings, and therefore no Banelings. Also not any Ravagers, which is kind of surprising to me. I wouldn't say that Ravagers are like a must-have, but I feel like if you're going to go like pure on Roaches, they're definitely a must-have, because otherwise Force Fields can just ruin your day. And yep, there we see them. Another little tip for people, if you're comfortable and you don't think, I mean, this is a little bit overeager sometimes, but like if you want to morph Ravagers a little bit slowly, but actually increase the power of your army, I guess, what you can do is by morphing units that are damaged, they'll go back to full health. So what you can do is you can individually click on all your damaged units and then individually click on the Ravager. So you only morph the ones that have been damaged, so your entire army will go from, half damage to full health. He's actually making all of his roaches into Ravagers here. He's got 2. A little bit of a Ling counterattack here. It's going to work out pretty good for LilzLot because he's actually stationing his units on the 3rd base rather than the natural. Which is actually a smart move, considering that he's got the wall off from the early game. He also likes his shield batteries. I personally don't like the single shield battery with the single cannon, especially with this pylon placement, because you can actually attack it, like a range unit can attack the pylon from here and wouldn't actually be in range of the cannon. I like what he did before with the multiple shield batteries. Yeah, but no anti-air yet. It looks like he's maybe rushing up to Hive. Okay, send about half those Lings in, looks like. I'm surprised. I don't know why he made 3 Hallucinated Phoenix, especially since one like just standing there. Another Ling counterattack coming in. He realizes his opponent had his army there. Personally, I would have liked to see Harroku kind of just poke a bit. Like, you don't have to. Like, if your army isn't as good as the opponent, then you don't have to engage. But you can just like poke a little bit. You can just like, because like you can just run away and throw biles behind you, and your opponent can't go back. I don't really like morphing all the Banelings here, especially if he did in fact see that the army was there. Unless this happens, unless you send these units in first. He is able to kill a small chunk of zealots, and this is not going to do that well. Looks like. Oop, nope. He actually could have done well because his opponent actually didn't move his army over. But I mean, he lost a lot of Banelings, but I mean 6 workers is still okay, especially since he's actually massively ahead worker-wise. Look at that. That is a gigantic economic disadvantage right there. I'm surprised the supply is so even. He's getting a Spire up, and he is in fact rushing to Hive. So it looks like he's going to rush for Broodlords here, which I actually don't really like with the army comp he's got, because he doesn't have any like perfect anti-air. Like if someone opponent just goes into a bunch of Phoenix, or pretty much anything that shoots air, like Phoenix, Void Ray, Tempest, anything, the Broodlords are just going to get shredded, and the Ravagers aren't going to do that well. This is also a mistake. I am glad that Harroku canceled. You don't want to morph right in front of the opponent, because if you do that, they're completely vulnerable and they can't run away. He did full wall there just in time. Smart move. I personally don't, either way, even if he doesn't full wall, I personally don't like the move of just send in like 4 Banelings, because that's pretty much just enough to deal with the Zealot, and that's it pretty much. He's going for more economy. If I was him, I actually would just target fire the Cyber, because he can't make Stalkers at that point. He can't make like any units he really wants to. Oh. And didn't see that engagement coming. He's got Greater Spire on the way, and he is morphing a lot of Banes, so he should be able to defend this, especially since he doesn't actually have like any gateway power. He's got a few Immortals and Archons, and that's pretty much it. He's got High Templars with Storm, and he's going to be pulling them back here with Lings, but that shield battery is helping out a lot. Yeah, Harroku's doing pretty good damage, but oof. Did kill the hatchery with a bit of a Zealot run by. Wow. You know, I haven't actually had a hard time keeping track of games until now. Like, usually there's not like a bunch happening all over the place in in lower leagues, or in these minor league games. But yeah, we're gonna see a bunch of Broodlords coming in. He ran out of gas, but actually that might actually benefit Harroku a bit, because you don't want to have Broodlords with no Corruptors, because like I said, if the opponent just makes a few units, a few areas that attack air, they can deal with them quite comfortably. 2 random mutas is a little weird, and he's actually relying quite heavily on these Broodlords, and he's only got 3 of them. And with High Templars with Storm, I actually think LilzLot wins this engagement. Yeah, he definitely wins this engagement, especially since that Broodlord is not in position. He's not dodging the biles though, and those biles did hit the High Templar before the storm came out. The problem that Harroku has, he has a lot of links floating. He's also not moving them right. He's moving them for a counterattack, but he's moving them through the enemy units, which is a big misplay. More zealots as well. I feel like Harroku played pretty well this game, but his remax afterwards, like, he made the Broodlords and he made no other units. He had like 30 Lings and 3 Raptors. That was it. He was in no position to defend this attack. And this is another thing I was mentioning. Like, he had. It's not just against, other air units as well, it's just units in general. Broodlords are similar to Colossus in that if you don't have units that defend them, they don't do anything because you can just stim under them, you can move, Archons and Stalkers under them, and they just die super quickly. They're a big glass cannon. And because he's floating a lot of minerals, he's making a lot of Lings, which are allowing the Broodlords to do some good damage, sure, but even though he's got a lot of Broodlords and Broodlords are good, his opponent's just got so many units. It's really just this high ground position that's really saving him here. I don't think Harroku is dead quite yet, but it's definitely looking very, very rough for him. He's down to 3 bases, but thankfully his opponent hasn't made a 4th. Personally, if I was him, I would not actually send these Lings into the opponent's base. Or into the opponent. Oh, no, Micro. No, Harroku, no! Harroku, where are you looking? That was the big misplay that lost him that. He definitely could have held that. It looks like he will still hold it, but he lost all of those Lings he just made, and he's down to 3 Broodlords. And that's going to put his opponent... Hold up. Okay, I see what was happening. His opponent was continually making units, but he wasn't macroing out of it whatsoever. He's just now making a 4th. Honestly, if LilzLot's macro was a little better, then Harroku would definitely be dead here. Imagine if this force base was finishing around this time. Harroku would definitely be in a bad position. And that Warp Prism not going to do it either. Wow. Harroku looked like he was in such a bad position, but it looks like he might have just barely held it. And because his opponent wasn't macroing out of it at all, he was putting pretty much all of his beans into one basket. And they didn't end up being fed to the kids. The kids just threw them away. I mean, if you're making another batch of beans behind it, that's all right. But if they just end up getting thrown away and you're not remaking them, that's really bad. Doesn't have many roaches and also doesn't have any raptors. And again, don't morph right in front of your opponent. This is gonna go kind of well for him, I guess, because he's at least baiting them into the Broodlord range. But again, he's got blink and they're pretty damaged. Also, Storm pretty rough. Thankfully, he's got pretty much High Templar, and that's it. And he didn't actually kill the Broodlords. But yeah, Blink pretty much hard counters Broodlords if you don't have anything to defend them. And that's, I think, the problem Harroku's having right now. Because look, he's got just Broodlords. Broodlords by themselves don't do anything. Like, you have to hope that the opponent has, like, no anti-air. But the opponent's making what he needs to make, which is a bunch of Blink Stalkers and a bunch of Archons and High Templar with a Storm. He's got a bunch of drones not mined here. He's transferring them now, but actually doesn't have a place to transfer them. All of his bases are fully mined. And personally, I actually am against making, like, the Corruptors here. Because, again, like I said, he's only using them. He's not actually using the Corruptors for anything. He's using them just for Broodlords. And Broodlords do not kill this. Like, Broodlords is not a superior... Broodlords by themselves just don't beat this. He's got Mass Transfuse, which is good, but he really needs to be, like, kind of shooting and moving with them. Broodlords, despite being slow, you can shoot and move with them. Looks like he might, again, just barely hold. His opponent's got a 4th behind it, though. But it's very much overmined. Looks like he might be going for a 5th, maybe. The problem Harroku has is that he's making Broodlords, but he doesn't have enough money to make anything else. So even though he's holding on, he's massively behind economically. He needs to be able to get a base up and hold it, but his opponent's just not letting him do it. Also, if you're not warping in units, don't have it in the warp version. And now he's targeting the queens. It would have been better if he killed that queen as well. He retargeted the Broodlord, wasn't able to kill it. But yeah, targeting the queens was actually kind of a good idea there because the stalkers could have killed one or two Broodlords, but if you kill the queens, they can't transfuse. And yeah, another thing is that with just Broodlords, with how slow they are, they're not good at defending just zealots. Like, he's got no ground whatsoever. And he's making even more Broodlords. I feel like this is... I mean, he doesn't have enough economy to make, like, enough Roaches or Lings to the point where they would be able to buffer for the Broodlords enough. But I feel like, again, just making more Broodlords also isn't good. So I feel like he's kind of in, like, a lost situation. Especially since he's not actually reacting. Yeah, he just sees it now when the hatchery is halfway done. Looks like he might lose the hatch. Yep, he's going to lose it. I'm surprised he didn't react to that quicker. I'm really upset because I actually missed this engagement. I didn't get to see how it went down because that engagement is actually by far the most important engagement in this game. That's the moment where he never had enough units to actually kind of compete with it, to actually like defend his Broodlords. I feel like despite that engagement looking like quite a bit of a mistake, I don't know it for certain. And I think the overall biggest mistake Harroku made was I don't think he realized his army was standing here because he kept just moving a bunch of Lings and Banes and just kind of sacrificing them for nothing. And even though I kind of like the idea of going for a Bane hit here, like, you spend almost all your Banelings just... Yeah, he is kiting back here, but, like, if this was your plan of kiting back, then, okay. A little bit of premature GG, but I feel like if your plan was kiting back then why did you morph a Broodlord there? But yeah, I think the biggest mistake Harroku made was that he was using all of his Banelings, and they were never close to the workers. The Banelings on the third base never got close to the workers, and the ones that were on the natural base killed the Zealot, and then he has like one or two remaining. And at that point, it's pretty easy to deal with. And I feel like once he saw that his opponent didn't have many probes and he couldn't really get a good connection, I would have loved for him to see him kill the gateway in Cyber, so his opponent can't make Stalkers, can't make Adepts, but on top of that, it's one less gate. So I think that it wasn't any gigantic mistake. I think it was just or a few small mistakes that ended up costing Harroku that game. I think given his position, like, at one point I looked at the supply and I was like, holy crap, how is Harroku actually, like, way ahead supply here? Because it looks like he was so screwed, but he wasn't. But now we're going to be facing another game. I'm going to be quite annoyed if they don't pick me, because I guarantee you I can direct this guy. We'll see you in the next game.